2 tampons may mean my marriage is over.
Final update. Am I the a-hole for leaving the restaurant after my sister flirted with my girlfriend and made her uncomfortable? Brother-in-law's husband, 38 male, makes me, 24 female, feel uncomfortable. And I don't know how to tell my husband, 30 male, without them thinking I'm homophobic. I, 25 male, have been on a few dates with a trans person, 25 male to female. Is there any acceptable way to ask if they have had bottom surgery or not?
2 tampons may mean my marriage is over. I, 29 female, have been with my husband, 30 male, for 7 years, married 4. I've never had a reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase, nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that or him were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband. I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the back seat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair, and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation, I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I found. I'm trying to think, like, the car makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe he was hooking up with somebody in the car and then it fell out and got lodged in the seat. But the sock drawer is like, even if he was cheating on you, how did this end up in the sock drawer? This time in my sock drawer. Is there any possible way she could have, like, that the tampon that she borrowed from Fiona could have ended up in her sock drawer? Do you guys know what I'm saying? OP, before you confront your husband, get more evidence. I cannot tell you how many times my dad or my brother just chuck things in a random drawer because they don't know where they belong, but they still want to help. If the 2 previous tampons, Cars and Fiona's, are not 100% accounted for, I would say there's a chance the one you found in your drawer is one of those. That's what I was thinking. However, it is suspicious. If I were you, before planting a camera that would completely break your husband's trust in the case he is not cheating, I would start becoming more unpredictable with my movements. Come back early from work when you can, or go on a girls' night, but come back way earlier than usual. If he is cheating, chances are you will catch him. Like, I'm just trying to think of, like, if you're getting cheated on, how did this tampon end up in your sock drawer? People might be like, oh, like the woman is trying to tell her, but you think the woman would just go outright and tell her. You know what I'm saying? Send her one of those, hey girly, like Instagram DMs. There's a better way to tell the person, like, hey, yo, you're getting cheated on, by like dropping a tampon in the sock drawer. I do think it is possible that this same tampon is the one, because, like, she didn't use it, so, like, it had to go somewhere unless she threw it away. Like, maybe there's a possibility that that same tampon is the one that ended up into her sock drawer. Updated post, September 20th, 2023, 18 days later. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected, but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the back seat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughter daughters could have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were and where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either fucking my husband, fucking with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for misplaced/foreign objects, there was none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had happened in or around our home, he said it would be nearly impossible to keep from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2 years old, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed at home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the third or fourth day, I was just happy to see a near healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of the week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they'd wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps were just a pain in the ass and a no-go for the efficient diaper changes in my opinion. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered and kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused like before and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked again if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a third time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. This is like the plot of a horror story. What do you guys think, chat? Because I think it would be so weird if OP was getting cheated on. Either the person that her husband's cheating on is being so sloppy that they're leaving tampons in weird places and dressing up the woman's children, or if she is trying to tell the wife that she's sleeping with her husband, why? I could maybe see the situation where like the girl's like, when are you gonna divorce your wife and be with me forever? And the husband's dragging his feet, so she's trying to like speed up the process. But there are definitely way better ways to speed up that process. Leave a nude photo of you, like something more obvious. Put it somewhere where the wife is gonna find it. But this is weird. Reminds us of our disassociation related amnesia, but this is very clearly not that. That's what, oh, bro, what if like the husband has like dissociative identity disorder? What if like the husband, when the wife leaves, the husband is turning into a woman? Bro, that would actually be a fire movie. To answer a couple questions, my 2-year-old can only string together a couple words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy or clothes/bow, she answers based on cues I give her, e.g., who gave you that pretty bow? And she repeats pretty bow back to me, or mama, daddy, over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning. She can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, and I'm not totally sure. I have a 45-minute commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notice on. Nothing there. If anyone has recommendations for me for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect, LOL. Is it possible one of the hair clips came from the daycare? I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion, LOL. OOP replied to this post. She clarified she did ask the husband where the onesie was from and added this. He said, must be one of the old ones, which would be weird but plausible. I swore off the long side button onesies after our first kid, and we donated the rest of them. Is it possible that one slipped past us? Sure. What doesn't make sense to to me is how adamant he is that he didn't change her into the onesie or give her a bow. Yeah, wait, actually, that's a really good point. If a woman had come over, slept with him, and changed his daughter into the onesie, when confronted, wouldn't he be like, oh yeah, I did that. I'm gonna get caught for cheating if I tell her, like, it wasn't me. In his head, he's like, oh shit, so-and-so, who I just cheated on my wife with, must have come and, like, changed her, so I should tell her that I changed her. For him to be like, I didn't do that. That's like almost more truthful for him to be like, yo, I don't know how the fuck this got on her. He says, I'm misremembering what I left her in that morning. I'd give him the benefit of the doubt on the onesie existing in her house somewhere, but to insist that I buttoned her up in a piece of clothing I despise and then forgot about it is something else. Maybe they have some creepy person living in their attic. I've heard of that happening before. That's what I'm thinking.
Final updated post, October 6th, 2023. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating, or caring for my kids the way I should have been, and I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my brother-in-law agreeing to help with the install/setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A Ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work, half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesman for the 15th time. You can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. Wait, what? How does she know this? I immediately called my husband to ask him what the fuck this woman was doing in her house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the Ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call, though, he picked up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. Oh, okay. That would make sense as to why OP knew, like, oh, she was supposed to be 2 states away. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict who spent the better part of her adolescence and young childhood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had molested them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was in our house with our children. I'm trying to decide if it's better or worse that he wasn't cheating. She probably saw the daughter naked when she changed her into a onesie. Honestly, like, I think this is worse than cheating, bro. Not only letting a sex offender handle your kids, but keeping it a secret from your wife. I'm all about forgiveness. Don't get me wrong. I think people need to be given the opportunity to earn forgiveness, but keeping it away from your wife, I think it would have been better if he cheated on her. Suffice to say, I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all, and still somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently, my sister-in-law, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to connect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know, or worse, try and keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in secret, often at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage in my husband's car so the Ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised on his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head, the tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist, shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years after I'd told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer postpartum depression like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls almost too much that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this mindfuck, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation and a lot of anger. Call the cops and a lawyer. Already on it, believe me, we're going scorched earth with this motherfucker. Like I said, man, I think it would have been better if he was just cheating on her. I really thought this was going to be sort of cheating or people messing with her, but wow. Yeah, I thought it was going to be like, yeah, so like someone has been sneaking into the house. I was thinking that was worst case scenario. Final update. Am I the a-hole for leaving the restaurant after my sister flirted with my girlfriend and made her uncomfortable? Original post, September 29th, 2023. My 19 female sister, Haley, 20 female, not real name, is a very open and flirty person. She never put a label on her sexuality, but she has said she's attracted to everyone. Ever since we were in high school, she'd often flirt with girls I was interested in. She'd also flirt with my friends when they'd come over to hang out. Sometimes Haley would even come into my room without knocking just to talk to them. It was very uncomfortable, and some of my friends even stopped coming over to my house because of it. This made me really angry, and I told our parents, 45 male and 42 female, but they'd always say I'm being homophobic and to leave her alone. So she'd always get away with it. A few months after she graduated, she moved out of the house, and I haven't had to deal with her flirting with my friends anymore. 7 months ago, I met my now girlfriend, Layla, 18 female, and we really hit it off. We've been together a little over 4 months. One thing to note about Layla is that she's really shy, so she never voices any concerns until after the fact. Well, I really wanted her to meet my parents, so we set up a quick dinner at a nice restaurant on Tuesday night. Without even telling me, my parents invited Haley, who was almost 30 minutes late. For the better part of the dinner, she would constantly flirt with my girlfriend. She'd give Layla compliments about her clothing, body, facial features, and even offer her number multiple times. My parents would just laugh along with her antics, saying it's just how she normally is. But I could clearly see Layla was uncomfortable, so I paid my side of the bill and took her home. When we got to her house, I asked if I could spend the night, and she said yes, and that's where I've been for the past few days. My parents and Haley have been blowing up my phone, calling me all sorts of names, which has me thinking I was in the wrong. I haven't answered any of my sister's messages, but I told my mom where I am. When I asked Layla about it, she said the compliments were nice at first, but she got uncomfortable. So am I the a-hole for making a big deal out of my sister flirting with my girlfriend? I didn't put my reasoning, sorry. My parents think I'm an a-hole for ignoring my sister's messages, and an even bigger a-hole for walking out of the restaurant. They say I was entitled and rude. I'm gonna go with not the a-hole, but what OP did not, he was ignoring his sister, but he needs to call her out on it and push her to apologize to the girlfriend, because the real victim here is the girlfriend. The fact is that the girlfriend was uncomfortable, and that's unacceptable. So for him to call the sister out by being like, hey, you're flirting with her, it was very, very obvious whether our parents believe it or not, and you can't deny it because she was uncomfortable. You need to apologize to her. I think the real victim is the girlfriend. I think OP needs to stand up for her, which is definitely a hard thing to do, especially in a situation like this where the family dynamic does not seem perfect. I'm already low contact with my sister and have been since a few months after she moved out. Last time I saw her was Easter for a few minutes. I'm thinking of going low contact with my parents, but my girlfriend says she would feel bad if this was the reason I stopped talking to my parents. I don't want her to think it's her fault, but I'm pretty sure she's going to blame herself anyways. Would your parents think it was cute or funny if you flirted with Haley's dates? Haley has never been in a relationship long enough for them to meet our parents, which is why I think she has so much fun flirting with everyone. It just makes me angry when I can visibly see my friends and girlfriend getting uncomfortable with it. A few told her to stop before, but she didn't. That actually reminds me of a time one of her female friends came over a few years ago and I hinted that she was pretty. My mom said I was a creep and had to stop stalking my sister's friend. I bet if you had a brother, your parents would be far less fine with this. I've often wondered that, and a few of my friends have mentioned it before, but my parents have always shut down the conversation before I could bring it up. Besides this, Haley and I used to be very close and we had a bunch of stuff in common, but then she came out and it's put a huge strain on our relationship. I'm sure if my sister was actually my brother, my parents would have said something a long time ago. I think they don't want to risk losing my sister and her claiming homophobia over them if they speak to her about it. Have you tried talking with your sister? I've tried talking to her privately when this started, but she would run and tell our parents that I was bugging her. Then my parents would tell me to leave her alone. It was a constant back and forth all the time. Why do they think you're entitled? They say I'm entitled because I told my parents beforehand that I would be paying for the entire bill, so they didn't end up bringing any money with them. Apparently my sister paid for them after I left. Updated post October 1st, 2023. Friday night, I messaged my mom and dad to let them know I wouldn't be conversing with them unless Layla was given an apology. Up to this point, that still hasn't been received, and I don't think it ever will. I also let them know I'd be stopping by on Saturday to pick up my things from the house. Well, Saturday morning, I go over to the house and bring my girlfriend's dad, who we'll call Carl, to help me. Sitting on the porch is my sister, who tells me immediately she wants to talk. Anyways, we go inside and sit down, which is when she says she has to tell me something without me freaking out. Basically, in a much more dimmed down version, my sister tells me she's had feelings for me since high school. Fucking what? What? Time the fuck out. I am speechless. I feel like I need to go to church after reading that, you know? It's just so fucking crazy. Someone tell the sister it's okay to keep some things to yourself. Which is when I started going to the gym and slimming out a lot more. She said the main reason she flirted with my friends is because she wanted to divert her attraction somewhere else. According to her, this is also the reason she moved out so quickly, because she couldn't stand being around me and knowing she couldn't have me. I left. I didn't get any of my stuff, and honestly, I don't know if I'll go back to get it. I blocked my sister on everything as soon as I got back to my girlfriend's house, and my mom keeps messaging me telling me to apologize for walking out again. I don't know how to feel. I'm absolutely disgusted. I feel like throwing up all the time, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get up and go to work tomorrow like everything's normal. I haven't told my girlfriend or her dad yet, and I don't know if I'm going to. I have no idea if my mom or dad knows, but even thinking about it makes my head hurt. This is so much worse than I thought it was. WTF. Do your parents know? I don't know if my parents know, and I have no intentions of asking at this point. I'm just trying to calm down and think about what I'm going to do next. You guys might hang me for this opinion. Don't get me wrong, this is extremely messed up. I don't think blocking the sister is the right move. I think this is an issue that needs to be dealt with. I know you need time to like process it, but I think this is something where you work on some sort of closure and maybe figuring out like why this messed up thing is happening. Go to the sister and be like, hey, that's never gonna happen, and we need to go to therapy or something to figure out why you feel this way in order to like get you through this. I understand OP's reaction, but I don't think avoiding it is the way to move forward. You can't just leave that even if it's messed up. Absolutely, I agree, Alucard. She actually made an effort to pull away from the attraction as well. Granted, it wasn't a great effort, but still, that's a really good point. If she's able to identify that it's messed up and has done things to try to pull away from it, I guess the further thing would be go to therapy for it to find out where that's coming from. New update, October 9th, 2023. Last Tuesday, I messaged my parents telling them everything my sister had told me. It wasn't until Thursday I got a reply where they called me all sorts of names. They said I was perverted, a liar, a man-child, etc. However, after messaging back and forth with them for a while, it came out on my mom's side that my sister confirmed my story and wanted me to say it was false because neither of them wanted to believe it. It's safe to say I have no intention of talking to either of them for a long time. The parents are being very immature here. I told my girlfriend everything on Tuesday as well. She was a lot more supportive than I initially thought, so that worked out pretty well. On Friday, we told her father and we started looking for apartments to move in together. As for all my things back at my parents' house, my girlfriend's dad and a few of my friends went to pick up my stuff without me. I gave them a list of all the necessary things. My friends don't know why I moved out, but just that it was serious and not to ask. Which leads us to today. I know a few people on my update post commented about this being fake, and as much as I wish it wasn't, this is the hell I'm living in. Over the past week, I've been looking back to my sister and I's relationship and realized a lot of stuff that isn't normal. I'd give examples, but I just want this to be over with. Been together for a little over 4 months, but known each other 7 months. That's super early to move in together. Holy shit. I'm having a tough time with this because I don't know if OP is going about this in the right way, but I honestly can't blame him for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's super young. OP is 19. If this was me when I was 19, I would have 0 capacity to handle this in a mature situation and in a situation that could benefit everybody involved. And number 2, it does not sound like his family has been mature enough to give him the tools that he needs as an adult to handle this situation in a way that is appropriate, or maybe not even appropriate, but just like logical. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. No wonder the sister has so many issues dealing with her problem. These parents are so unhelpful. Yeah, I agree with that. The parents are definitely not helping. Brother-in-laws, 36 male. Husband, 38 male. makes me, 24 female, feel uncomfortable, and I don't know how to tell my husband, 30 male, without them thinking I'm homophobic. Original post, September 25th, 2023. This man, 38 male, has known me, 24 female, since I started dating my husband, 30 male, a few years ago. So you can imagine that we shared a lot of moments, and I consider him my family. But lately, he's been treating me like I'm the new girlfriend who's been dating his brother-in-law for a week, if you know what I mean. I gave birth 10 weeks ago, and I still feel tired, and every time I say that out loud when he's around, he tells me I'm overreacting, that it's been 2 months, and that I have to stop taking advantage of the situation to use my husband. He is the one who takes care of everything in our house. He does the laundry, cooks, cleans, and some nights he takes care of our daughter. But he does it because he wants to, because more than once I wanted to do those things and he told me that I should rest or things like that. The other day was my husband's birthday and I decided to bake a cake and prepare a special dinner to receive his family. And of course, he had something to say about that. He started making fun of me, saying that it was time for me to get my ass off the couch to do something productive. And he doesn't say those things when my husband is around. He says them when we are alone. And I try to ignore him because I don't want problems, but I can't do that anymore. Yesterday, he sent me an article about sex after giving birth and how many times husbands cheat on their wives because they are tired and don't want to have sex, and said something like I should pay attention and not let my marriage be ruined by my laziness. And the truth is that my husband and I had sex again a few days ago, but that's not something I want to tell everyone. But he assumed that because I'm too tired to do certain things, or because my husband decided to take care of me and do everything, I don't satisfy him. I swear I can't stand him anymore. I don't know why he changed or why he suddenly treats me like trash, but I've had enough and I want to tell my husband, but I don't know how. I know I sound like a fool for not knowing how to communicate with my husband, but in the past, this man has had problems with my other brother-in-law's wife because he accused her of being homophobic. And since then, everyone took his side and hated her, and I don't want that. I honestly don't care if he's gay or whatever he wants to be. I just want him to leave me alone because I have been struggling a lot with guilt for letting my husband do everything, and listening to the things he says hurts me because they make me feel like I'm being a burden on my husband and that he will soon get tired of me. My fear of being accused of being homophobic has to do with the fact that I come from a religious family, and I'm sure that if I say something about him, everyone will take it the wrong way. So how can I face this? Confronting this man is not an option because he is not a peaceful person, and I don't want him to yell at me or accuse me of things that I'm not. So what can I do? How can I talk about this with my husband or my brother-in-law? I honestly don't know if he knows how his husband is treating me, so I thought it would be a good idea to talk to him too. It worries me that you're worried about talking about this with your husband, who, not that the husband is supposed to always take the wife's side, but if you married this human being and she's coming to you and is like, hey, I'm having this problem, and you know them on a deep enough level that you know they're not homophobic, you should be open to siding with your wife over your brother-in-law's husband. So that kind of concerns me. I'm not sure if that's OP overthinking it and like the husband would take her side, or if the husband is like not a good husband. I think the best plan of action, if you're really truly concerned about it, is try to record a video of the brother-in-law being disrespectful and of you telling them that it's not the case and them still being a dickhead about it. I would show your husband and the brother-in-law the article that the husband sent, because that is way out of line. Like, you can't even call that homophobic. You can just be like, hey, he's sending me articles about our sex life. That's weird. That's so weird. October 2nd, 2023, update 1. After posting, I decided to take the advice of one of the people who commented on the original post and left my phone near my husband with the chat open for him to see. He saw the chat and asked me, since when did I let his brother-in-law send me those kinds of things? I told him that I never let him, and he simply started giving me advice without me asking for it. And I told him everything. And fortunately, he believed me and said that he would talk to his brother about his husband's behavior. That same day, he called his brother and they had a long talk, and of course his husband was hysterical and told him a bunch of lies about me. According to him, ever since my daughter was born, I haven't stopped bragging about motherhood because I know that he can't have children, that I always try to make him feel less for being a man and things like that are not true. Of course, the majority of the family believed him because they know that I come from a very religious family, and they believe that's why I'm capable of doing those things that he accused me of. They always believe everything he says because he and my husband's brother have been a couple since high school and suffered a lot of homophobia, and they are constantly trying to protect them from it, even if you are not homophobic. I would like to say that he hates me and thus justify him, but he was always like that. A while ago, he had a fight with his older brother's wife and also accused her of being homophobic. They had a fight because he told her children that they should like boys because girls aren't as fun and things like that. Then she told him not to tell them that and that everyone will decide if they like girls or boys in the future, and he got offended and he accused her of being homophobic because according to him, she would not have said that if he had told her children that they should like girls. When he accused her of that, the whole family turned their backs on her and no one talks to her. And now they're doing the same thing to me, and as much as I try not to care, I just can't. I have known his family since I was a teenager and I considered them family. I don't understand why they do this to me when I need them most. And the worst part is that my husband has been acting weird since then and treats me differently, like he is avoiding me. And it terrifies me to think that maybe he will end up believing him. It doesn't sound like people are being objective. They're like, whoa, well, I don't want to be labeled as homophobic, so I'm going to side with the gay one. Like, that's just not a good reason to side with anything. I've known many people from very homophobic families who aren't homophobic and vice versa. You can't judge someone based on their family. Exactly. That one's hard. I would say I still think you should record something for sure. You got to catch that motherfucker red-handed. I, 25 male, have been on a few dates with a trans person, 25 male to female. Is there any acceptable way to ask if they have had bottom surgery or not? Original post, September 25th, 2023. We met on Hinge and have been on 4 dates so far. They've all went really well, and for the next date, she suggested dinner and a movie at my house. Seeing as sex is now a possibility, I feel like I need to know whether or not she has had bottom surgery. Having sex with someone who has a penis is a definite hard boundary for me, and I think it would be better to ask her now than to risk the chance of having to turn her down at my house. So essentially, I am looking for advice on the best way to ask her what her situation is downstairs without upsetting her. Initial thoughts on this. I think if I went on a date with someone and they were trans male to female, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I do have to agree, I personally wouldn't be that attracted to somebody who has a dick. I like the idea of like, this person's attracted to what they're attracted to. That's just how it should be. They've got to figure out if that is the case. Be honest and straightforward, it's probably going to be upsetting either way. Okay, Alucard, I have a question. Is there any way that it can't be upsetting? Also, like, and this is just me trying to understand this. It's a necessary question. It's going to be upsetting, but like, I don't think it should be. I think it's like something where both sides have to be open to the conversation and letting it go wherever it needs to go. If I were in this situation, I would also want to have this conversation in a constructive way and a necessary way. I think it would honestly be even more upsetting if they came over when it came time to do something. That's when they realized it wasn't, and then that results in like honestly a worse situation in my opinion. I would much rather have that conversation ahead of time, even if it's a hard conversation. And I don't think it should be, I don't know, I can't like tell someone how to feel, but like, I don't think it should be an upsetting one. It's a necessary conversation. For a lot of trans people, we are ready to be broken up with until the other person knows about what we have because of those boundaries. It can be upsetting if you're super into someone and the only thing stopping them from staying with you is your genitals. The kind of thing is also something that is very personal for many, and they have to be careful about when and even if they talk about surgeries they've had and the like, which is why many don't talk about it right away. As sensitive as a conversation it is, it has to happen. Like, I just look at it as a normal relationship conversation. There are certain relationship conversations that have to happen in order for the relationship to move forward that are uncomfortable and they're sensitive and people's feelings could get hurt. But the relationship isn't going to happen if the conversation doesn't happen. A close comparison, I'm going to call it that because I don't think it's the same thing at all, but a close comparison that like a straight man like me could relate to is, let's say a girl and a guy, they've been going on a couple dates in the same situation where they're like, let's hang out, Netflix and chill, cough, cough, wink, wink. And the dude has like a micro penis, right? Or, you know, in a girl situation, sex for her is very painful and she doesn't like to have sex. She can't have sex. As difficult as those conversations would be for the dude to be like, I have a micro penis, or the woman to be like, I can't have sex with you because it's painful for me. In my head, it makes way more sense before that date to have that conversation. And I'm not saying that these conversations aren't sensitive or they don't hurt people's feelings, but what I'm saying is like, those conversations need to be like, not necessarily normalized, but just like, it would be a lot more difficult if you go into the date, the sex comes up, and then the person's like, whoa, you have a micro penis, or whoa, we're not gonna have sex because it's painful for you. I think those things are better communicated beforehand so the parties can make their appropriate decisions. Like, if we're making these things more normalized, I think that's just a conversation that like, if you're trans, that's something you kind of have to lay out on the table. Oh, just like gay guys have to like discuss, like, are you a top or a bottom? Those situations are often even closer than you'd think, haha. But yeah, I agree. It's just something that's really hard, especially considering the current political climate. Yes, 100%. I think the political climate definitely plays in there. There's nobody going out saying we got to kill everybody who has a micro penis. Here's a question, Alucard. Is that something you talk about over the phone, on a text message, or on a phone call? Do you say, hey, let's meet up for coffee first and then have the conversation there? Where would you want this conversation to happen? I personally try to disclose it before we even go steady. In that case, text is cool. But if it's someone I've been nervous enough to not disclose it yet, then definitely sit down and talk IRL thing. Interesting. Okay. I could say something minorly offensive here. I don't mean it to be offensive. This is like a genuine question that I'm thinking of. And if I ever say something offensive, try to be like, okay, Sarby isn't trying to offend me here. He's just trying to understand and to ask the hard questions. I don't know. I feel like if anyone gets mad at me, I'm not being transphobic here. I'm literally genuinely trying to understand and have an open conversation. So my question, let's go back to the micro penis example. I think it is the person who has the micro penis. It is their responsibility to communicate that to the person that they might have a sexual encounter with beforehand in a way that's comfortable for them. So that could be a text message. That could be me just being like, hey, I really like you. Before this goes any further, I have a micro penis. In my head, it's more the person's responsibility in the micro penis situation to communicate that. Would you agree with that in this case? I don't want to say like I think it's wrong, but I think it's not doing anybody good if you're transgender, male to female, but you haven't had bottom surgery, so you still have a penis. In my head, I very much equate that to somebody who has a micro penis. It's their responsibility to communicate that before anything goes further in a situation that's comfortable for both sides, right? So I think it's uncomfortable for somebody who has a micro penis to present that as you're about to have sex. I don't think very many girls would want to pull down the pants and be like, whoa, and him being like, oh yeah, by the way, haha, micro penis. Kind of same thing here. I think that's something that needs to be communicated beforehand, not in a sexual situation. But I don't know, like I go back, I'm thinking of the conversation that I showed you guys in chat here with Nikita. In this conversation, she was like, it's not my responsibility to communicate that I'm transgender. Like, I will tell you when I'm comfortable, like this is just something that needs to be normalized, which I agree. But at the end of the day, people have their sexual boundaries and preferences. And as someone who has a sexual boundary and preference, where if I was in this situation, I would be uncomfortable if this person did have a penis. Those are just my thoughts. I hope I didn't say anything offensive. I just am trying to put out the scenarios and hear from other people who maybe have a little bit more knowledge on this than I do. I agree. It's pretty common from what I've seen for trans people to disclose these kinds of things to their partner first anyway. The hard part in this story is admittedly that the girl hasn't said anything, which is why the only advice I can give is to be straightforward and to be aware it might go bad. No fault to OP, it's just a fact. Interesting. Okay, Alucard, our stream's transgender representative, is saying that at the end of the day, the trans person should tell them, but since they haven't, OP definitely needs to open up the conversation. The conversation could go really well, it could go really bad, but it really doesn't fall on OP's shoulders, but it's a good conversation to have. Alucard says, oh yeah, it's not your responsibility to tell someone you're trans. It is your responsibility to let a partner you're about to sleep with know if you have congruent genitals to how you project. I like that. That is a great way to put it. Updated post October 7th, 2023. There were a few questions that kept being asked, so here are my answers. 1, if she doesn't have bottom surgery, why don't you just do anal? I'm not into anal, so I wouldn't be interested in that with a trans woman or a cis woman. 2, why are you leading her on by going on dates with her before asking about her genitals if that is a hard boundary for you? I think it's rude to ask someone about their genitals before/on the first couple of dates, LOL. I agree with this. 3, why is a penis a deal breaker for you? This seemed to cause some people a lot of offense, and I got some very angry comments and messages about my genital preferences being transphobic and wrong. See, this is the response I was afraid of. I don't think genital preferences is being transphobic. Like, I genuinely, when I pull down a girl's pants, I don't want to see a dick. It's not attractive to me. I don't see it and I'm like, yes, that is what I want. That's not transphobic. That's just what I'm into sexually. For me to disregard my genital preferences would like low-key border on like not having my consent. Like if I am not consenting to wanting a dick, like I don't think that's transphobic, which seemed to be a very fringe opinion. I can't tell you the specific reason I'm not attracted to penises. Presumably the reason that most other guys who consider themselves straight aren't attracted to other penises. Why are you going on dates with trans women if having a penis is a hard boundary for you? I was originally under the impression that most trans women would have bottom surgery, so I didn't think this would be a big problem. I've since learned that most trans women don't actually get bottom surgery, but even so, I still think it's worth taking the time to go on dates with someone and find out, because there are also 100 reasons why I might decide to not date a cis woman after the 4th date. That's actually a really interesting thing too. I think that's a valid question. If you're okay dating male to female transgender person person, but your sexual preference is that they have a vagina. I don't know, like, what are you gonna do? Like, oh, I'm gonna date no trans people because of this? I think that's not right. Okay, so as I mentioned above, the main thing I learned from my original post is that most trans people will never get bottom surgery. I had been under the impression that basically all trans people will have bottom surgery, which was obviously not true. Knowing this, I decided that I definitely wanted to ask her in advance to prevent any embarrassing moments at my house. I also didn't want to ask her in a public setting in case the question upset her, so I thought the best method would be to text her. Shout out to user /fairyring who wrote an amazing message which I ended up using. Hey, I've been really enjoying our date so far a lot. I've lately been thinking about it and I thought I should let you know that I do have some boundaries around sex related to genitalia. I feel like we should discuss this before we go any further to make sure we're not sexually incompatible on a fundamental level. As most people predicted, she wasn't offended and she had actually been planning on telling me the next time we met. The upshot is that she hasn't had bottom surgery yet, but she is planning to have the operation and is actually on the waiting list for 3 years and is expecting another year wait before she can get the procedure done. She also told me that if we wanted to continue dating, she would be fine with not doing any sexual stuff that involved anything below her waist until she had fully transitioned. I told her that's absolutely fine with me, and she came around to my house for dinner and a movie like we had planned. I'm not going to go into details, but I will say we did end up fooling around a little, and it was honestly amazing. She ended up staying the night at my house, and I asked her the next morning if she wanted to be official / exclusive with me, and she said yes. Aw, so she's now my girlfriend and everything is going great. Yesterday we met up together with a few of my friends and they all really like her, so I'm very optimistic that it's going to work out between us. Okay, cool. I like this message. This is a very appropriate message. OP seems very well intentioned. See, I think that's really important, Jade. Like, I wouldn't say OP was being transphobic in any way. He just had a lack of experience, a lack of understanding, a lack of education around this topic, and was looking for answers. So for like these people to come into a Reddit thread and berate them for it is like, that makes people not want to get educated on there. Like, if they're like, okay, well, if you're making me the bad guy, then I'll be the bad guy. So I appreciate Alucard and Jade who have been in the stream educating me and being very understanding of my lack of understanding, knowledge, education, experience around this topic.
If you enjoyed, click right here to watch another one of my Reddit videos and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on new messy Reddit threads every week.